Unbelievable, shocking, and haunting. What if I told you that inside some abandoned buildings lie chilling reminders of stories long forgotten, secrets preserved by decay, and nightmares frozen in time? What we're about to uncover isn't just strange, it's downright disturbing. Welcome to the 10 most disturbing things found in abandoned buildings. The time capsule hotels in Kinugawa Onsen, Japan. In the ghost town of Kinugawa Onsen, Japan, British urban explorer Luke Bradburn ventured into a cluster of abandoned hotels that have lain untouched for decades. Once thriving resorts during Japan's tourism boom in the early 1990s, they were deserted as the economy declined, and strict property laws left them frozen in limbo. The interior revealed a haunting tableau. Lobbies still adorned with furniture, tables, and drinks left out, arcade machines loaded with toys, and even stuffed taxidermy, a deer and a falcon still on display as if awaiting guests. Bradburn described walking into rooms like stepping into a time capsule, where nature had begun reclaiming the space. He also noted structural dangers, staircases collapsing, missing floors, and the ever-present threat of falling through rotten beams. The contrast between neglected grandeur and preserved artifacts makes this one of the most eerie frozen-in-time scenes ever documented. Operating rooms and biohazards in the J.B. Thomas Hospital in Massachusetts. Peabody, Massachusetts hosts the decaying remains of J.B. Thomas Hospital, closed in stages with its final shutdown in 2013 after serving communities since 1907. Urban explorer Ben Stevens infiltrated the site more than 7 years later and discovered an upsetting scene: abandoned operating rooms, wards full of rattling gurneys, scattered medical records, and even biohazardous waste left behind. Beds and mattresses were strewn about. The entire building felt like a post-apocalyptic set, with equipment just left there as if staff had vanished mid-shift. The juxtaposition of such intimate medical spaces, places built for healing, and now deteriorating as if littered with potentially dangerous waste, gives this discovery a deeply unsettling edge. Hundreds of wasted homes in an Irish ghost estate. In County Longford, Ireland, over 100 modern homes were constructed as a part of a €100 million development plan and then were abandoned, never completed, never inhabited. Drone footage shows entire rows of unfinished homes, gutted interiors, exposed brick, broken windows, and silent streets. These ghost estate developments are remnants of financial collapse, rising and falling dreams. The vandalism over the years has been intense, with interiors stripped, walls tagged, and nature slowly encroaching. The emptiness is eerie, not just for what the structures are, but for what they represent: hopes, investments, communities that can basically never come to be. What makes it even more disturbing is how recent they look. Driveways paved, garages half installed, like the families were simply late to move in. Locals describe the site as both a tragedy and an eyesore, where developers' ambitions collapsed into silence. Standing among the shells of these homes, you feel the weight of absence, as if laughter and footsteps should echo there but never will. Squatters hiding in crawl spaces in Happy Valley, Oregon. In Happy Valley, Oregon, a homeowner reported hearing strange noises beneath their floorboards, only to discover a man, 40-year-old Benjamin Bakur, living secretly in the crawl space. Authorities found the space equipped with a makeshift bed, lighting, electronics, even a TV and drug paraphernalia. This phenomenon is called frogging with a PH, and people secretly inhabit others' homes without permission, often modifying hidden areas for long-term stay. The idea of someone setting up a hidden dwelling in your own home, living entirely unbeknownst to you, is profoundly disturbing. Bakur had built a system to make the crawl space livable, even tapping into power for his devices. Imagine realizing someone had been under your feet, possibly listening to conversations, watching your movements, and living parallel to your life without your knowledge. For many, the story hit harder than any haunted tale because, unlike ghosts, this was flesh and blood, and it was very real. Scotland's Chernobyl Clune Park Estate. Port Glasgow's Clune Park Estate, once a 430-unit housing estate complete with a school and church, has decayed into infamous abandoned zones dubbed Scotland's Chernobyl. By 1997, most buildings were deserted. The school closed in 2008 and the church in 1997. Now, with fewer than 20 residents remaining, the site is riddled with arson damage, graffiti warnings, structural collapse, and haunting silence. Councils have announced demolition of multiple tenement blocks and public buildings, but until then, the estate remains a chilling monument to societal decay and abandonment. Explorers describe stairwells coated in soot, warning graffiti telling intruders to stay out, and apartments littered with burnt furniture and broken toys. The church, once filled with hymns, now stands hollow, its walls blackened. Walking through Clune Park feels less like a neighborhood and more like a dystopian movie set, a community erased, leaving behind a ghostly shadow of lives once lived. The Terrence Building Psychiatric Tower in Rochester, New York. Opened in 1959 as part of the Rochester State Hospital, the 16-story Terrence Building housed 1,000 patients and served as a psychiatric and geriatric facility. The basement contained a morgue and labs. The 5th floor was home to the criminally insane. The building closed in 1995 and has remained unused ever since. Over the decades, it's transformed into a graffitied, crumbling relic where ghost stories and reports of paranormal activity abound. Fires have broken out, including a 2019 arson in the lobby. Tales of maltreatment and abuse in its operational years only add to the sense of dread now lingering among explorers. The towering structure dominates the skyline of Rochester, a constant reminder of a darker medical past. Locals say the silence of the building is oppressive, as if the walls themselves absorb the cries of those once housed there. Even without stepping inside, just seeing the skeletal tower sends chills down your spine. The ghostly presence of Henryton State Hospital. Henryton State Hospital in Maryland was inaugurated in 1922 as a tuberculosis sanatorium for African American patients and was abandoned in 1985 and demolished in 2013, but not before decades of neglect and horrifying decay. After closure, the site attracted squatters, drug addicts, and vandals. Windows were smashed, asbestos was everywhere, and the entire complex became structurally unsound. Fire after fire ravaged the property, including notable blazes in 2007 and 2011. Despite efforts to preserve or repurpose the site, its violent decline and hazardous condition stand as a grim reminder of racism-era healthcare and institutional abandonment. Urban explorers documented eerie sights, children's shoes scattered in empty wards, beds left to rust, and hallways where sunlight barely pierced through. Those who visited often reported a heavy, suffocating atmosphere, as if the suffering of patients never left. By the time demolition crews arrived, Henryton had become less a hospital and more a ruin steeped in sorrow. Decay captured by Steph Lawless photography. Photographer Steph Lawless has made a career out of capturing the haunting beauty of abandoned spaces across the US, from dead malls in the Rust Belt to schools and theaters frozen in neglect. His work documents decay, empty shopping centers filled only with dust and abandoned escalators, flooded indoor pools, collapsed roofs, overturned shopping carts gathering dust, and nature reclaiming synthetic spaces. The silent emptiness speaks volumes, empty fixtures, faded advertisements, and silent auditoriums echoing with ghosts of consumerism past. Lawless has been criticized at times for romanticizing decay, but his goal is preservation through imagery, to show what society leaves behind. His photographs force us to face uncomfortable truths about waste, collapse, and shifting economies. Each frame tells a different story of not just neglect, but of a culture that once thrived, now erased and forgotten. Standing in front of his work feels like staring into the end of civilization itself. The mummified figure in an abandoned house. According to the list of real stories featured in horror-themed media, one particularly disturbing case describes a mummified woman sitting in front of a TV, discovered in an abandoned house. She was seemingly seated like watching a show, even though decomposition had preserved the figure into something more silent and macabre. Other entries include rooms filled with hanging dolls, jars of human teeth, and dozens of dead animals in cages. Though details on location and dates are sparse, the idea of a preserved body intentionally, or even unintentionally, left by itself is profoundly chilling. What makes this worse is the casual placement. The woman wasn't found in bed or collapsed in a hallway, but sitting upright in a living room. It's a snapshot of a life cut short and frozen forever. The thought that someone once lived there, stopped, leaves an impression that lingers long after you've left the story behind. Human records and medical equipment left to rot. Circling back to one of the most haunting themes, human traces abandoned in medical buildings. Whether it's entire surgery rooms, medical records, biohazard waste, or bodies preserved unintentionally, these places where human vulnerability once laid bare are now left to decay. The lingering presence of human files, instruments, and personal devices in abandoned hospitals like J.B. Thomas or other forgotten institutions means these buildings hold stories that were never archived and lives that were never properly closed. The human imprint in these spaces and its abrupt disappearance makes this the most disturbing find of all. Explorers often describe how eerie it feels to read names on charts or see x-rays of spines and lungs tossed onto the floor. These items were once critical to someone's health, now discarded like trash. They remind us that behind every piece of equipment and every note lies a story of a real human being, one that never expected to be forgotten. That haunting silence speaks louder than any ghost story ever could. But that's it. Let me know what you guys thought of this video in the comments. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe because you won't want to miss the next video. Thanks again for watching.